Booyah, and it's time for the Game Sports Show. It is your host, David McCaig Jr., bringing you yet another special edition upload powered by the Game Entertainment and Media and sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. In particular, a special shout out to Little Caesars Pizza in Sault Ste. Marie, as well as Little Caesars Pizza Canada. For this edition, it will be just yours truly being your host for this upload. Now, let's get to our Little Caesars special edition guest. Now, I'm going to get into a lot in this introduction, so sit back, grab your slice of pizza, perhaps your nice cold brew, which maybe could be from Northern Superior Brewing Company in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, or just your general cold brew, or a nice glass of wine, water, or whatever tickles your fancy. This guest is a former fourth-round pick, 121st overall in the 2001 NHL entry draft to the Detroit Red Wings. He's an alumni of the Sherbrooke Castors, where he spent 4 years in the organization in Major Junior. He has played in the ECHL, AHL, KHL, Liddell, Austria, Slovakia, even Asia, where in Asia, he won the Asia League Championship most recently. Oh, and of course, he also played in the National Hockey League, where he donned the jerseys of the Vancouver Canucks, Buffalo Sabres, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Between the NHL and other professional leagues, he strapped on the pads for 643 total games in the regular season, with 109 total playoff games in the professional level between North America and overseas. On top of his professional output, he also contributed at the international level in the Canada U18, 3 years of the Spangler Cup with Canada, and 2 years in the Japan Cup, with a total of 10 games internationally. And at the international level, he won 3 gold medals, 2 at the Spangler, and 1 with the Canada U18. Fun fact, in his 6 registered games in the National Hockey League, he averaged under a 2.40 GAA and approximately a .92 save percentage. For the Manitoba Moose, this tendy set the franchise record with a 2.17 GAA, surpassing Corey Schneider's and tying the record with a .922 save percentage, sharing with the Moose himself, Johan Hedberg. He was twice named a second-team All-Star in the American Hockey League and is the AHL top 10 all-time wins as a goaltender. And if my research serves me correct, he scored an AHL goal during his time as a goalie as well. He is proudly from PEI, who owns State of Mind Goaltending, known as a true goalie, journeyman, now retired, and whom had some wicked pads with his time with the Leafs, the one and only Drew MacIntyre. Drew, how's it going? And welcome to the show.
Wow, that is one. That's impressive. That's my career. My career is not easy to follow, but you nailed it. You taught me things there with that introduction.
Honestly, we like to say we do our research. We're definitely take our pride knowing that we don't follow a script, but let me tell you, I didn't memorize that. If so, honestly, I'd be very gifted if I was able to memorize all that. I had to do my research, and you had a very impressive career. So I wanted to make sure I gave everyone the opportunity to enjoy not only trying to hear me not really take a breath through that introduction, but just to hear the stories of your career. And it's fantastic. I'm happy you appreciate that. I take pride in those long introductions.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, really impressive. Thank you.
No, definitely. Now, before we dive into the show, where, of course, as I mentioned from the top, of yours, myself, and yourself, I know we're going to be diving into a great deal, of course. Of course, my introduction say that. But growing up and playing hockey in PEI, it's a beautiful spot in Canada. Fellow Ontarians will agree that when I say how aggressive we are with our hockey development here in Ontario is really putting it lightly, especially from what I can recall in my younger days. But PEI is a passionate hockey area, and I want you to share how it was then and now, and maybe if you want to go back to that kind of the childhood, how it was in PEI in terms of your development as a goaltender.
Yeah, no, it's it's I've been all over the world now, but obviously everybody has an attachment to their home. But this is a beautiful place, scenery wise, and also just the people. People are awesome. Small town. It's a good place to grow up, and you get taught a lot of good values. And my father was a goalie. Comes from a family of 13, and it was clear. It was very clear from day one what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a goalie just like him. And he had some brothers that were goalies, and some of my older cousins were goalies. And it was just I would go watch my old man play old timers at 10 o'clock at night, and he'd let me stay up, and I'd be the only kid out there just watching, and it was so clear what I wanted to do. So fun place to grow up. We were on the ponds just like you would in Ontario, but on the ponds after school. And the differences in PEI is that everybody you're playing against, no matter where they are on the island. Where in Ontario you have so many people to play against, you don't even know who they are. But anyway, really cool place to grow up, that's for sure.
Definitely. No, and I've never had the opportunity to travel there, but that is on the bucket list, if you will, to be able to go down and visit PEI. And I've had many friends that have had the opportunity to go down to PEI, to go to Nova Scotia and visit that part, of course, of Canada, and certainly envious because it's definitely very, very beautiful. And that's no offense to Ontario. I think Ontario is a beautiful province, but there's just something about PEI, and I've also heard nothing but great about British Columbia as well. But so I got to try to make my way to both spots, but I have my pins on the map, if you will, to go to PEI. So that's great to hear about the overall background there. But officially diving into the topics of the show, if you will, you and I talked briefly prior to recording our mobile devices, and of course that included kind of us just having conversation, but then as well as dealing with the difficulties of our online recording program that we're using. But we'll save that for another time. So one thing that I want to dive into is what you're doing now. State of Mind Goaltending. I want to dive into that right away, get the plug-in right away. Also to kind of explain to our listeners what that's about and what's going on in Drew MacIntyre's life post-hockey.
Yeah, thanks. I started goalie school 4 years ago, so I was still playing. I was playing in Europe at the time, in Germany, and knew that I didn't have too much longer, didn't know how much longer, but I ended up scrapping a few more years out of there. But wanted to get something going just in case my career did end sooner than I hoped, and started goalie school. Started really small. Probably the first 2 years were very small, just a couple camps. But we do a goaltending school that's specifically for goaltenders. Goaltenders of all ages, all skill levels. It just hasn't been an area of strength on the island. We haven't pumped out goalies at all. So it's kind of a goal of mine, is to kind of establish some goaltending and turn this place into a hotbed of goaltending, hopefully someday. And so State of Mind, you can tell by the name, I do a lot of work on the ice, but we also do work off the ice. As far as my sports psychologist that I had in my career, we work on the mental game at all of our summer camps. And yeah, it's been a real cool experience. I've loved it. A lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun, and it's something that I'll continue to do post playing. I'm kind of in the sending out my resume phase right now, so I will be looking to do something on top of that. Yeah. But it's a great side gig, and who knows, maybe I'll keep it going. I will do it all year round now. To what degree will depend on what kind of job I get.
The big thing is, when you mentioned this, obviously you said it in the State of Mind, is obviously the mental aspect, even off the ice. Inside hockey, athletics, even the workplace, school, anything in life today, it's finally, to an extent, being recognized, the mental side of sport or any of the other topics that I just mentioned there. And that inside being a goaltender, there's such a great deal of pressure, right? You're the last line of defense. We've had other goaltenders on the show that have brought up stories like Jason Bakashawa, Steve Passmore, Adam Monroe, guys that have gotten into fine detail, and there's always challenges, obviously. And you have forwards that have 3 or 4 lines, depending on what league you're in. But if you're in the professional level, you got 4 lines. Some extra forwards that battle to get into the lineup. Defensemen, you got 6 on a start on the ice for the most part. Maybe you have 1 or 2 again in the press box. But in net, those are 2 roster spots. And it's obviously, I would say fairly, the toughest position to crack in the National Hockey League. Okay, fair enough to say. But also, the biggest thing is the mental aspect of the game is so imperative now to really instill into the youth, because if they can have a strong mental output to put aside that one goal that they let in, or maybe the effects that they're having off the ice with family, which can occur and can affect their game, and really focus on using hockey as what it's meant to be put in place for, and that is fun. The last I recall from when I remember being younger, that's what makes you enjoy the game and make those next steps, is enjoying the game firsthand. And to enjoy the game, you have to have a clear state of mind, if you will, pun intended. And the big thing is the mental is so huge, Drew, right? And I think you can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, I played 18 years pro, so that's, that was a big area that I wanted to focus on. So, it's not just for their goaltending, it's for their schoolwork. It's for, kids these days have a lot of pressure, with cell phones and social media and everything. So, mental health has become really important, obviously, and it's at the forefront of everything. But we work a lot on that. A lot of it is just trying to find tools that will make you enjoy the game more. I want young goalies to enjoy the position. It's a fun position, but it can also be stressful, and that brings some goalies to not play the position very long. So I want them to enjoy the position. I think they'll enjoy the position when they're seeing that they're improving on the ice. They can see that, wow, I'm getting better at this. And then also just when they can handle pressures, they can, let in a goal and be able to put it behind them. And then, just really the biggest thing is finding tools and actually, ways that you can basically, it all comes down to staying in the moment. Really kind of boring statement, but you need to be able to stay in the moment as a goalie. If you're on a 10-game winning streak, it really doesn't matter. You got to stop that next shot. If you've lost 10 games in a row, it doesn't matter. You got to stop that next shot. So that's really what the game of goaltending comes down to. A lot of goalie people complicate the position more than it should be, I feel, and it's really a pretty simple position. Every single goalie will face adversity because it's you and the other goalie on your team, and it's a lot of stuff you got to deal with.
Definitely. Now, you know what? Of course, I was going to bring to you and ask you about what are the challenges that is faced, but obviously the mental health is what we brought up. But besides even that, outside of training now compared to how it was from what you can recall, obviously the training has changed tremendously from even, never mind, from 10, 20 years ago to let alone 5 years ago, how things have certainly evolved. But outside of the mental health side, what are some challenges on the ice that you notice some goalies face for themselves? Is it I remember the T push. I'm not sure if that's a big thing anymore. That may sound crazy saying that, but is there certain developments that you see that are common traits in these youth that they have to commonly work on, or is it just a matter of every goalie is different?
Every goal is definitely different. No, the T push is still something very, very, very that we all need to use. And I think a good goalie coach just there's no one way to play goaltending, and everybody's different. Body types, by how tall you are, just kind of your stance, your kind of base core in the net. But a lot of the game now is trying to stay on your feet. The game used to be just down in the butterfly, be big as possible, and now it's a fast-paced game. Shooters are so good. You try to get from point A to point B on your feet, and then then go down. We've really tried to eliminate sliding all the time, and that's so that's kind of the thing that the new age goaltender is really trying to figure out. And really, it's old school in a way. It's kind of how they used to play, and then it kind of changed. It got into a lot of blocking and sliding and everything. So it's kind of turning back around that way.
See, that's great to hear. I like what you said about trying to, bring up the goaltending in PEI. Obviously, the Canadian goaltending, I think we have some good prospects coming up in terms of the National Hockey League. But you know what? Obviously, some flash names before, but hopefully we can have some bigger names come up in the future based on going to your goaltending school and growing that way. That'd be fantastic. But nonetheless, before we even dive into our next topic, I want to just give you the opportunity to plug where listeners can follow you, if you have the social media page or if you have a website they can check out any videos of sorts.
Yeah, thanks. State of Mind Goaltending by Drew MacIntyre is the official name. Instagram, Facebook, and then we launched a website this past year, stateofmindgoaltending.ca. So yeah, check it out. We got camps all summer, and and then periodically throughout the winter. So.
definitely. See, there's ways to contact. Social media is absolutely fantastic to use in today's, especially with networking and great. So definitely check that out on Instagram and on Drew's website. So going to our next topic, and we're going to go all over the place with our agenda, with our show, and that's what makes this fun to get into all the different areas that you play with. And I want to actually start with you where you most recently played, actually, in Asia. Right. So, keeping track of going to dive into loads of your great hockey story and history, I want to start in Asia because that is fantastic. You won a championship there. You had the opportunity there. I want you to dive in and give listeners that background, how it is playing hockey there, how that all happened to you, memories for you that happened there, and all the fun stuff.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can articulate it. It was just such a cool experience. The people of Japan, I was in Japan the whole time. So 3 years in Japan. I played with two different teams. After my first year, I went over and played with the Nippon Paper Cranes. And
Fantastic.
yeah, and in January, they told us that the team was folding after the season. So they ended up saving the team. They did a big rally. We did a Cinderella run to the finals. We lost in the finals, but it ended up working and they saved the team. But basically, the end of the day, the budget was slashed dramatically. So I went to our biggest rival, and they're called the OG Eagles, and I played there for the last 2 years. Um, so basically, if you want to know my life over there, I often tell people, do you you're probably too young, but do you remember the movie Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck?
You know what? I actually did see that movie. I was 10 years old. Fun fact, this was actually brought up in our video game chat recently. So it's funny that you say that. I can't reiterate the whole movie to you. I wouldn't be able. It's been a while, but yes, I certainly know the movie. Listeners, that is a movie I believe from the early 90s, I want to say.
Yeah.
I was born in 91, so I think it was a year or two after that. I can't get the year top of my head, but Tom Selleck, though, absolute beauty. But sorry.
Yeah, no, that's so listeners, if you're interested in what my life in Japan was like, just watch that movie. He's playing baseball over in Japan, so baseball is much bigger than hockey in Japan. The professional baseball league is awesome, and we went to a game there once, and it was so fun. Such a cool experience. So hockey is growing. It's not there yet, but besides that, the culture and with the way of life, they really did a good job in that movie and very accurate. So it was me and another import. So when I was with the first team that I was on, I had an American with me, and then when in OG, I had a Canadian with me for the both years, 2 years. So essentially, you would walk in our dressing room in between periods at any time, and it's a whole team of Japanese guys, everybody, staff, everyone, and then it's just me and my other buddy over in the corner, and we're sitting there, and the coach is speaking Japanese, and we have an interpreter. So the interpreter would essentially just sit in between us, and as the coach is talking, he would be like speaking English to us. So like we try to get close to him just so he's not like distracting everyone. But absolute bonkers. It's so funny to think about. People just think that's so funny to think about. But such a cool experience. People were just beautiful people. They're the hardest working people I've ever played with. My teammates were the hardest working people. So determined, and just but they have a great sense of humor. Very serious, but they're joking all the time. Japanese karaoke out with the guys is something that's for sure.
So any kind of size, some Gangnam Style, or is that kind of I know that.
Oh yeah, I've seen them drop some Gangnam Style or whatever you call it. Yeah, no, they like, you'll see a serious Japanese guy who like my interaction with him is at team meals and at the rink and at the gym, and he's just working hard, and then you get him on the karaoke and he's like just going crazy on the karaoke, just singing like Britney Spears or whatever. Like, it's just the funniest thing ever.
I could just imagine, honestly, and you have I can picture the time where you and your fellow countrymen are sitting in the dressing room, looking at each other, saying, "What the heck is he talking about?"
Oh yeah,
trying,
no,
they're just trying to
and
hold it in.
yeah, and the coaching is way different. So really weird fact. My first team was owned by a paper company. And I moved to our biggest rival, and they're our biggest rival also because they were the only other team that was owned by a paper company. So basically, these guys come out of college and they get a job with the paper company. But these guys basically have a job for life with this paper company. But right now, their job is to be a hockey player with the paper company. But at any point, the team could the paper company could say, "Hey, you're no longer a hockey player. You move here to our offices." And then they work in the factory, or they work depending on their education level. They work in the factory, or they work in the offices, or it's just a crazy, So I worked with a paper company the last 3 years.
So let me get this straight, and I hope I imagine you'll get this reference. I know a lot of listeners will, obviously. So basically, like a Dunder Mifflin kind of thing, Michael Scott and all that kind of thing is going through my mind. Did that ever cross your mind? And did you feel like on the Michael Scott or the Dwight Schrute of the team at all?
Well, funny fact is that that's basically my favorite show of all time. So,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, like we would do events at the paper factory, and yeah, it's crazy. Like these guys work there their whole lives. Like they front right out of college until they retire. They're and some of them play hockey until they're like 42 years old or something because it's just that's their job. So.
That is
Uh, yeah,
wild.
pretty crazy kind of. It's just different world. The hockey world is really different over there. The coaching is, it's really just that's where they're behind. I love my coaches that I had, the two coaches that I had, but their skill and their speed. If you came to a practice of ours, you would be blown away. You would be like, these guys are amazing. Like their skill and their speed is crazy. They just, the concepts, the coaching, it's really the grassroots. They just need to bring it, I went to one or two like youth practices and, you can just see the difference. We're so lucky in Canada. It's our novice practices are, really well done. And,
Yeah.
Hockey Canada does such a good job. So that's really just the difference.
See, the one thing, and speaking of difference, quickly about this too, is that we were told all these different stories of guests that we've had about the craziness of fans in just Europe in general. A lot of this was obviously towards, there's Germany, there's England, and obviously with Brooksy bringing up his time in England, and with Martin St. Pierre when he brought up his Bon Jovi references that fans are singing to him while he was on the ice. But with going where you played, how you mentioned obviously the coaching and the development, that's where a lot of it is behind in Canada, and I can certainly understand that. But even with the fans, I would say European fans are better than sometimes North American fans in a different way, and that's no offense to North American fans. There's a lot of passionate hockey fan bases out there and cities and towns throughout North America. But how was the fan base where you were from? Was there a great deal of fans, a great attendance, or did they just get really involved, or how was it there for that?
Yeah, so that's where, that was the big difference. I came from Germany and Slovakia, which is, nuts. Like you
Yeah.
can't even hear yourself think at these games. Like I can't even it's hard to even communicate to your like as a goalie to communicate to your defense because it's just so loud. Like
Wild.
it's crazy. So it's so much fun. So that was kind of the part that, I was totally thankful and I'm so glad that I went to Japan. But that was the part that it wasn't as fun. The atmospheres just weren't the same. Nothing crazy numbers wise, couple thousand, but like very reserved. Like they'd be clapping when we score, where where you're used to like people going crazy when we score. So very reserved people that way, which doesn't really make sense because in baseball they go bonkers. Like it's super loud there. They're singing and dancing the whole time. So yeah, like I remember my very first second, like my very first shift in Europe. I was playing in the KHL, and it was like an exhibition game at like the first week of August. I was in the KHL with Prague, Czech Republic, and we played an exhibition game in Lugano in Switzerland. They rim the puck. I go behind the net to get the rim, and I jump up. Like I thought there was a bomb. Like I stopped playing. I missed the rim, and I like stopped, and somebody threw a firecracker at me, and it like went off right by my head, and I get up, and nobody even reacted. The play's just going, and I'm just like, that was my welcome to Europe. I was just like, this place is like, these guys are crazy. This is an exhibition game. This is an exhibition game in August, and like I just got a firecracker thrown in my head.
My goodness, Matt, I would have said, no, I'm out. Coach, I'm out. I'm going. Send me back home. I'm out.
Yeah, pretty funny.
No, see, and you know what? Obviously, playing in there in Asia, I believe one day the hockey may get to a different level there, but obviously Canada is continuously evolving and getting better, and hopefully, with the great to hear those stories about the hockey development, how it is a corners of the globe game, and it's awesome to see all the involvement with the fans that they certainly get into. But that is probably the craziest fan story that I've heard on the show. This boy throwing a firecracker at you. Like I said, I'm out.
Yeah, and this wasn't even, this wasn't a playoffs. I can't imagine what they do in playoff series, and if the goalie's like the best goalie in the league or something, like they didn't even know me. This was like an exhibition game in August. Anyway.
Definitely, like you got to go walk to the rink with bodyguards around to make sure they pumped. Because there's some stories in Europe that I'm sure that you've heard with people having to go up to get their money, and they're standing beside people that have guns sticking out like big machine guns. I'm sure you've heard some stories involving that. But nonetheless, you're definitely gonna backtrack here a little bit now. Now we're going a little bit way backer, if you will. Way backer. It's not even really proper English, but let's continue with that. I want to talk about the QMJHL and the NHL draft day for you. Obviously, firstly, I want to go through with Sherbrooke, where you spent 4 seasons, right? Like a great deal of time there. There must have been some good experiences, memories of players that you played with in particular. You did play with some notable guys there, like in particular P.A. Parent, though. But those years in junior really shape out kind of, if you will, a late teens development as he pursues the National Hockey League. So sticking kind of with the Q first before going into that draft day, before you had your name selected, what can you get into about Sherbrooke? I'm sure you have some great memories with having 4 seasons there.
Yeah. It's I work with a lot of young guys going into the draft now, and I was kind of saying that I was telling one of my guys there yesterday that it's very seldom do you ever get to stay with the same team in your whole junior career, because usually they rebuild and they sell the farm, and they go for it and whatnot. So that's kind of the junior cycle, especially in the Q. But I moved away when I was 15, and I actually moved to Ontario. I moved to Trenton, Ontario, to play with the Trenton Sting for a season. I was 15 years old playing junior A, so I was playing up, against 20-year-olds. So that really got me ready. This was back in the day when, from PEI, we didn't have a Quebec League team at the time, so I had the choice where I wanted to go. I could have went to the OHL, WHL, or Q. Everybody kind of thought I was going to the OHL, and there's parts of the year where I thought I was going to go to the OHL. But I had a deadline that I had to kind of declare where I was going, and really I was ranked higher, and there was just more interest, it seemed, in the Q. So I was the first, kind of like the first ranked goalie. So it was that kind of stuff just grabbed me, and a couple of the teams that were the most interested were teams around the Maritimes. So I thought that would be amazing, living in the Maritimes, like close to my home. So anyway, long story short, I get drafted by a team that said that, showed no interest, Sherbrooke, and I get there on day one. They go to put me in my billet. I'm a first round pick, thinking, oh, I'm gonna get a great billet. They throw me in a billet that's completely French. I don't know a word of French. She doesn't know. It's a mom and her, like a single mom with her daughter, and they don't know one word of English. And I'm just like, I don't, I think back to it now and I'm like, how did we do that? But her brother spoke English, so he would come over for the first month, probably every night or every second night, just to kind of help us figure life out. But so that was a rude awakening. That was kind of a tough start, but it was a really cool experience. I'm really glad, we had really crappy teams, which gave me a lot of work. Got to play all the time. Really, nothing crazy happened in my career as far as being on good teams or anything, but I had a goalie coach that really just kind of he turned me into a professional goalie. Basically, his name is Stefan Waite. He After our 4 years together in Sherbrooke, he went right to the Chicago Blackhawks. Ended up winning 2 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks with goalies that had a lot of question marks, and he did an amazing job there. Then he went to the Montreal Canadiens and worked with Carey Price the last bunch of years before he got relieved this year, mid-season. So.
Yeah, you know what, and sitting here while we're talking about him, I did give him a quick little Google search, if you will, and obviously, 2013 to obviously March 2nd, 2021, so it was fairly recent is where he was involved with goalie coaching and being a member of the Hawks sales in 2010, 2013, so it was the Canadiens from 2013, as I mentioned, so a lot of time that he certainly spent there, and to have a goaltending coach devote that to you, I know a lot of people would think, why wouldn't you maybe want to request a trade out or maybe look at an opportunity of winning a championship? But if you have the opportunity to play every game and get that development at your time of where you're getting prepared for the professional level, and to especially work with someone like Stefan, it must have certainly been somebody who you can consider as the most influential person in your career as a goalie coach, or is that, or there must be a lot of people I'm sure that you can name,
Yeah,
but I'm sure that's
yeah,
a big,
I,
big piece of your career pie, if you will.
yeah. I mean, if at that stage of the game, that was make it or break it. He, I needed to, and young goalies they don't have forever to kind of show their stuff. They have a little window to show their stuff, and that kind of shows them if they're going to be a professional or they're not. So yeah, he was there for the most beneficial times. He was definitely a huge part of my career, and I say he turned me into a professional goalie. So and he was there. He's just a good friend. I remember my wedding, I ended up getting married at pretty young, 23 years old, and I remember he was doing a camp, like getting guys ready, like he worked with all the NHL guys before they went to training camp, and he was doing a camp, and he drove through the night and made it in time for my wedding. So it just shows like it was more than just a goalie coach relationship. He showed me, that a goalie coach is a friend as well. So that was really cool. But I've been so lucky that like the goalie coaches, like I've had some of the best in the game have been my goalie coaches throughout my career. Some for not very long, and some for a couple of years. So I've been able to kind of had a good education as far as that's concerned.
Definitely. And you had to, like, there's an opportunity where that was obviously a big part, but as you got on, you had a lot of people that you were certainly a part of. But nonetheless, you have your name get called in the draft as a fourth round pick to the Detroit Red Wings in the 2001 NHL draft. And fun fact for listeners on this show, that we've now had 3 goaltenders from the 2001 NHL draft on the show. That's Jason Bacashua, Adam Monroe, and now, of course, Drew. And a fun little fact, another player that we had on the show that was drafted in 2001 is Mike Sigamanis. So there's something about this show that when you're drafted in 2001 that we get you on the show. So if you've ever been drafted 2001 and you want to come on a sports podcast show, we are certainly your number one stop. But besides that, jokes aside, you get your name, get the call from Detroit. I don't know if you grew up a Red Wings fan, or what team you cheered on growing up, but was Detroit kind of on your radar a lot, or what can you get into about your draft story? Because that's certainly one of the traditions here on the show. We like to know where you were for your draft, what happened when you got the call, or if you were at the draft physically, meetings with coaches, players. What can you recall from the draft that year?
Yeah, I did the whole shebang. I did, the prep, the testing, and all the stuff, the interviews and everything, and then I did. Our draft was in Florida. The Panthers were hosting, so I actually went. I thought that I had a good chance of going on the first day. So back then, it was the first 3 rounds on day one, and then the remainder was the second day. So our goal was to go the first day, and I really thought I had a good chance. I didn't, so I was a little disappointed that night. But I remember sitting there that night and looking at the fourth round, and Detroit was definitely one of the teams that I thought would, my agent, I definitely thought that they'd be drafting a goalie. So so pumped to get called to them. At the time, they were like in a dynasty. They were the best team, amazing from top to bottom. I get down there, walk down on the floor and go to the table, and the first guy that shakes my hand, it's actually my 18th birthday that day. So I get down there, and the first guy that shakes my hand is Scotty Bowman. And he just shakes my hand and says, "Happy birthday." And so pretty classy guy to even notice that, and make sure he acknowledged it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't think he was using Wikipedia or Elite Prospects or Hockey DB. And yes, maybe both those things can send me I can send them the bill for giving them the plug here on the show. But nonetheless, you have for him to have that research, I'm not surprised. The things that we have heard about Scotty Bowman, there's a reason why he is arguably, if not fair enough to say, foregone conclusion that he's the best coach of all time.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of coaches that have had some big, obviously, impacts in the professional level and just hockey overall. But for him to know that, and for you to be drafted on your birthday, your 18th birthday, that did you, after the draft, did you have a nice couple celebratory mocktails, or should I say, did you have some beverages?
Yeah.
Sip here.
No, I didn't. I was there with my family, and I you know what? The crazy thing is a couple days earlier, my aunt and my uncle and his and her daughter, they came down to Florida and they got married. So we a couple days before the draft, I think it was before, it might have been after, but I think it was before. We did a little I think I was best man or something. So it was a long time ago, but so yeah, we had a little family trip out of it, but right away it was like they were like, okay, next week you're coming to Detroit, and I heard that it was pretty intense training and everything, and I knew I wasn't in the best shape at that time, so I knew I was about to get my butt kicked.
In Detroit, like you said, dynasty at that time. And from being a youth, I can recall telling you how much I disliked the Red Wings. Growing up a Leaf fan, still am a Leaf fan. People say I'm a sucker for pain, if you will. Taking my host hat off for a second and stating that, which obviously...
That's the year, right?
2021's the year. Every year's the year. If it doesn't happen in 2021, there might be a little issue. But you have... being inside Detroit, like you said, just a fantastic organization overall. And you start into your career transitioning into the professional level, and kind of dives us into our next topic, which I think will be more of our bigger topic that we'll get into, because it's really going to dive to your playing days in North America. But there's the East Coast, the AHL, the transitions to the NHL, and we'll try to go in order as best we can here, but obviously there is no agenda really to follow for it. But starts in Toledo and Grand Rapids, a few up and downs for a few seasons. Now you're a young goaltender, battling for your spot in an organization that Jimmy Howard coming up, Joey McDonald at the time, and let's not forget some killer skating prospects at the time too. Yuri Hudler, Kyle Quincy. Speaking of state of mind, if you will, how was your mental mindset right out of the gate entering the professional level? You said how crazy you got, your ass kicked in your training camp. You had that exposure, but as it developed, how did your mindset stay strong to really maintain confidence in the crease? Because you did do extremely well in that American Hockey League level, especially with some competition that you had in your early stages.
Yeah, no, thanks. It was a really cool place to get drafted. From day one when I go to training camp. I think I did probably 5 or 6 training camps. 3 of them were as junior, and then as a pro for my 3-year entry level deal. So training camps were insane. Like I'm sitting in dressing rooms with Dominic Hasek, Chris Osgood, Curtis Joseph, Manny Legacy, like Brendan Shanahan, Brad Hall. Like it was insane. Like they were a dream team at the time. So like
You're
training
like,
camp here
hell.
was just like, and we do tournaments. Like they basically split it up into 4 teams, and it was like that's basically what training camp was every year. It was just a tournament, and it was so fun. Like it was just like step up. You're a kid. You gotta step up. You're playing with like the best. You'll never play against better competition in your life, really. Even if I had made the NHL regularly, like these are the best players. So it was pretty cool. But at the same time, it was a tough place to go because I remember my first year pro. They sent me down, and what Ken Holland said to me was, "You're only gonna get up here if you can help us win a Stanley Cup," because that was their goal, and that's a lot to say to a 20-year-old just because, but it was true. Like, you see goalies now, they're 20 years old and they're getting a chance in their first year or two. But, back then they were so good. Like you're only getting up if you're going to help us win a Stanley Cup. So, year one went really tough. I had a lot of adversity. I played 11 games and then ended up having 2 surgeries. I had 1 surgery, did my whole recovery. And then when I was about to get back, I realized it wasn't fixed yet, and so I had a hernia surgery on one side, and then I put the pads on for the very first day, almost 3 months into my recovery, and they realized they had to do the other side as well. So my season was done. It was a blessing because I went home and met a girl, and while I was sitting on the couch, couldn't do a thing, and I ended up meeting a girl, and she ended up being my wife. So that was awesome. And then really, when I came back, I'm a year into it thinking, okay, I still got 2 years left of my deal, lots of time. They signed Jimmy Howard. And it was basically like, all right, well, I got to, do the best I can here and try to show that I'm a pro goalie. So spent some time in the East Coast League, but went to an awesome town. You want to go to a hockey town, you go to Toledo, Ohio. It was a lot of fun.
See, like in your GEA and your stats for when you played, especially in the American Hockey League, when you went up into the National Hockey League, I already stated in my introduction what your GEA was in the National Hockey League in 6 games, 2.41. You obviously did a good job keeping the puck out of the net, and you said obviously you battled back from injury. Jimmy Howard gets signed, and you can look at that. If you look at that Grand Rapids Griffins team from 05-06, which I know was in between kind of obviously the lockout and what was going on in the National Hockey League at that time, but crowded crease, Manny Legacy played a game, Howard played 38, you played 13, McDonald played 32, Osgood played 3 games that year, I should say. And of course, I pulled that up from Hockey DB. I don't have that in the top of my head, just not to creep anybody out. But nonetheless, you're inside a team and organization, as we already alluded to, that's extremely doing very well, and they did well and made the playoffs so well into the 10s until when the streak stopped. And the teams that were part in those early thousands, when Shanahan was there, Luke Robitaille, Lindstrom, Brad Hall, the list, and Stevie Y, and just the list goes on and on. And Brooksy, obviously, as listeners know, as a former professional player, you play with them and obviously played inside that Grand Rapids organization, where I think you played with him at that time. Would that be where you played with Brooksy? Do I have that right?
No, I actually my next stop was Manitoba, and that's where Brooksy and I played.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we avoided each other, Grand Rapids. I
Oh,
think we played again. I think I played against him when he was in Grand Rapids.
okay.
But he was with me. He was with me in Manitoba. So that was my next stop. So I did my 3 years. I fell into some loophole. Don't ask me the details. I'm still curious to this day what this loophole was that I fell into, but because of my games played and my age and everything, and because of that lockout that year, my 3-year deal turned into a 4-year deal, my entry level deal. So the Wings didn't want me. Like my time was up. They had Jimmy Howard. Like they were gone. Like there was no spot for me. They had somebody else coming in, and so basically, I spent the whole summer trying to find somewhere else to play. I had a job, but I was essentially I was going to the East Coast League unless somebody would trade for me. On my way to Detroit training camp, driving there, I got a call and Vancouver traded for me. So I went there, and that's kind of where I, really established myself at that level.
Yeah, definitely. Now we can dive into that between Manitoba and Vancouver, where, with Manitoba, I shared this right at the introduction as well. You're sharing the crease there with the Moose himself. You had a great year yourself. You had 41 games and 46 games respectively, and that's obviously inside Manitoba. There was a team that obviously, and you play with Rick Ripken as well, who obviously, God rest his soul. Obviously, Brooksy had a very big fight with him, one of the top 10 fights of all time, I believe, if I'm correct, or top 15 based on TSN. But you play in Manitoba. Kind of want to dive into that, how that mojo really started to kick in for you, if you will, and going to Vancouver after Roberto Luongo gets hurt, and you get called up for your first game, and you get a chance to go in the crease in the game. Go through those two experiences, in particular with that time where you do get the time in between the crease. Are you just shitting your pants?
Yeah, it was. Manitoba, like you look at my teams that I've played with. I've been really lucky. Like the top organizations in the AHL, and they were amazing. Like it was an NHL. We were playing in an NHL city, and we packed MTS Center. Like it was the funnest place to play. It was so cool. I think if you look back at my career, basically my best hockey that I've always played has been in Canada. So, I played with them, and I played with the Bulldogs, and I played with the Marlies, and had a lot of success with all three. But it was such a cool organization, such good people. They're all with the Jets now, basically. Like everybody just moved up, and it's not surprising. They're all NHL type people. So awesome place. I really started my first year nothing special. Like I was on my ninth life. Like I was on my way out. And Rick St. Croix, the goalie coach, who later in the story plays a huge role again. He's the reason why that got me to Toronto, because he was at the time the goalie coach of Toronto. But he was the goalie coach of the Moose at the time, and he really helped me a lot. He helped me he stuck with me. He saw something in me, and I ended up turning my season around, and it really went really well from there. Got into the game in Vancouver. I remember it was in San Jose, and there the goalies have the backup goalie has to sit across the rink. So I don't even remember, but I think I vaguely remember somebody like coming over and I saw it coming, like we were getting pumped. And those teams in San Jose at that time were unreal, and that building is so loud. So for me to get in there, mid game, I think it was in the second period sometime, it was pretty nerve wracking. And then frigging Joe Thornton gets a breakaway, and he decides to do a slap shot on a breakaway. So that was my first NHL goal, was Joe Thornton slap shot, top cheese.
Were you like, fuck you, Jumbo?
Yeah, I didn't think he'd do it. I saw him raise a stick, and I thought, this is a fake. He's trying to fake this kid out. But no, he had the marbles to go top cheese. So good on him.
No, that's, got to have a little bit of respect, Joe. Come on.
Yeah.
Former Greyhound, they got to represent the Sioux. Now that's what we do from the Sioux. Actually, somebody from the Sioux would certainly do that. Actually, but obviously he's not from the Sioux. But playing here, you get that kind of Sioux in you. So definitely, Aussie as a player. But you get that time in Vancouver, and in between that, obviously, there's Milwaukee, there's Chicago, there's Hamilton, and obviously we're getting into everything that we can here without going in order, as I mentioned. But in between all that, you do go to Rochester. You get just over 20 games with Rochester, and you get the call up to Buffalo. In between all that, after Vancouver and the Joe Thornton clap bomb on a breakaway, how did it all happen to transition between Chicago, then go over to the Buffalo organization in general, and then get the call up to play in Buffalo? Because at the time, I know Lindy Ruff, I believe, was still the coach at the time, if I'm correct. At the time, wasn't he? I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. So you have a team there in Buffalo who at the time had a lot of young talent, right? Cody Hodgson, Tyler Myers,
Yeah.
right? Like a very good team, potentially a team for you to grow with and be there. I know Ryan Miller was there at the time, obviously, because he was there forever. So in between all that, after Vancouver and in between starting in Buffalo, just get into some stuff about that.
Yeah, so Milwaukee went really well. It was an awesome year after my 2 years in Vancouver. I mean, to sum up these years, I enjoyed. I had success with those teams, but they always had somebody young coming up. Corey Schneider in Vancouver, Mark Dekanich in Nashville, Eddie Pasquale in Atlanta, and yeah. So it was just, it became clear. The knock on me was that I didn't have NHL experience every free agency, so I'd become a free agent all the time. July 1st was always a nerve-wracking day, exciting day too. But then I'd hear, well, you don't have NHL experience, and I'm just begging these guys. I'm just like, boys, how do I get NHL experience if you won't give it to me?
Exactly.
So that was, I still hadn't started a game, and that was my knock. Yeah, lots of success in the AHL, but big question mark is the NHL experience. So that was what really drove me. Just really wanted it, and that was what I chased for. It wasn't sign with the team that offers me the most money. It was the situation that would get me in the NHL. I thought I had it in really all those teams. I thought I had it in Nashville, and then I really thought I had it in Atlanta. They gave me a 2-year deal, and I really thought that was it. But the second year kind of got sour. Not sour. It was a numbers game. They decided to go with a young guy. I started the first game of the year with the Chicago Wolves, and I get a call. We lost, and the next morning my agent calls and says, "You're now the third. They're gonna keep you as the third string goalie, and you're not gonna play until you get traded." And I was just like, what? Like, so I did that for like half a season. I was getting dressed in like another room. Like, it was just pain. Like, it was just tough year. Like half year. And then team was really struggling, and they finally gave me a chance. Like, nobody was trading for me because I wasn't playing. And then they kind of had no choice but to play me, and I really, I went on a tear. And then thankfully they were true to their word, and I got traded to Hamilton, and that was one of the funnest times of my career. We almost won it. We came so close. Lost our heartbreaker on a tough call, Game 7 with about a minute left.
Oh, that sucks. Oh, I couldn't have.
Yeah.
Final minute? No, that'd haunt your dreams forever.
Yeah. It was a really horrible call with a minute left. We were down 3-0 in the series, and we came back to tie the series. Won Game 6 in overtime, and we felt like there was no stopping us. We were going to do it. And tie game with a minute left, and guy came down and shot. I covered it, and I'm telling you, I had it completely covered for a good. I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch it, but if I felt like it was a full second at least, and the guy basically slid into me and pushed me in the net, and they called it a goal. So it was a tough way to lose. But yeah, and then it brought me to Buffalo. It's easy to say now that you get these calls on these July 1st, and you're sitting there, you're just pacing back and forth. You're talking to your agent, you're talking to your wife. Like, we got this. Like, it's great to have options, but it's tough to make the right call in minutes. It's like they need you to decide. And at the time, that was the team that was, they were kind of really, they were saying all the right things. They said enough things to bring me there. They were starting the season in Europe, so I was going to start the season with them as like third goalie. And they had a young guy, Jonas Enroth, who they said I could challenge, but really I didn't get it. I didn't get a challenge. It was his job the whole time. But I thought I would, be able to get called up and stuff. But it was a crappy year. That was kind of my probably my toughest season. Just one thing after another, and anyway, and then I was really disappointed there, but because that was the year that Pugula came in, so they spent a ton of money, and I was really excited to get there, but anyway, it didn't work out, and I decided to go over to the KHL after the season with an expansion team in the Russian leagues. Just I had been getting offers for a few years and turned them down because I felt like I was just a step away. I was that number 3 guy on all these teams, and I just thought I was so close to the NHL that I wanted to keep going. And finally, that frustrating year just kind of pushed me to give the KHL a try.
What I don't understand too, and like we're gonna dive into the Toronto organization, which I'm pretty excited to get into about with you, because obviously my fan background, but just always curious about Toronto's organization. But you had such, and I'm not just saying this because you're a guest. I was talking to Brooksy about this. I was also talking to my girlfriend about before doing the show, who has got way more passionate about following hockey since being with me, of course. But you have the numbers that you had in the American Hockey League, and it makes no sense. It's almost like if I want to give you a player comparison to something, like if I had to give you a forward example to listeners, I almost want to say a Corey Locke. And the reason why I want to say that, because there's Corey, who was an absolute, a previous guest of the show, by the way, not a big deal. But besides that, he was an absolute stud in the American Hockey League, and Jerry D put a very interesting tweet out about it, where he was stating where he was in goals, the amount of goals that he got, but he only had this many minutes, let alone games, in the National Hockey League, not getting that fair opportunity. And seeing your numbers, like we could sit here, and I don't want to bring up saying the what ifs or, how something could have happened a different way, or let's go, I wish I could invent a time machine for you and go back, because, honestly, everything happened and worked out for you. You're able to travel to different teams and, see the world in a different perspective. And I'm sure you absolutely have no regrets. But if you look at your numbers, it just doesn't make sense why you wouldn't have been called up. And I'm sure you've gotten that a lot. I'm sure it kind of, look, you probably think of it in the same way in a sense, because almost seems like what else could you have done that you didn't do, right? You're breaking records, the American Hockey League, with numbers, and the GAA, the save percentage. You have a .922 save percentage, and goaltenders that are hitting the .922 pluses on average is extremely impressive. So, I'm not just saying this because you're a guest and that we're newly acquainted friends. I'm flat out telling you, because I'm an honest guy, that your numbers doesn't make sense to the amount of NHL games that you played, because you shouldn't have gotten more of a fair opportunity. So before we jump into the Toronto organization, that just doesn't make sense why you wouldn't have gotten the call for more games.
That means a lot. I appreciate it. Yeah. It was what was pushing me. It was what was, it was like somebody telling you that you're, that you can't do it. And it's like, yes, I can. We can say all we want. Like, I'm not a guy, I believe things happen for a reason. I don't sit here and think what ifs and complain or anything. It was super frustrating. And, that's why that was kind of what was chasing me. What I was chasing, it, wasn't like I said, wasn't to make as much money. It was, trying to get in that league, just because after a while it just became a thing. Like, all right, I just want to show myself there, because I had success against a lot of goalies who were going up there every month and having success. So, I knew I could do it. At the end of the day, I know that I got my game to be an NHL goalie. Like, am I an NHL goalie? No, I didn't make it full time. Got some cups of coffee, but I didn't make it full time. But I know I got my game to be an NHL goalie. So, that makes me feel a little better. But I at the end of the day, I was able to turn this into a career, and I made a career of being that reliable number 3 guy. And, my phone would ring when it was July 1st in free agency. So I'm very thankful for that. And then to be able to play as long as I did, I couldn't be more thankful. So.
Oh, for sure. And that's where, we'll jump into Toronto. We're going to dive into your time in Toronto. Then before we wrap up the show, we'll do a quick back tour with your international play in Europe before we get to our bonus question questions, which is always fun. And there's only going to be one bonus question, and I'll let you know what a bonus question is when we get to that point. Again, reminding listeners, is David McCaig solo here for this special edition upload with Drew MacIntyre, presented by Little Caesars Pizza, powered by the Game Entertainment and Media. Certainly, hopefully you're enjoying the show. Make sure you hit like, follow, and subscribe on all the platforms that the Game Sports Show provides. But of course, jumping into Toronto quickly / briefly, within the Leafs organization, you play with multiple guys who are part of that roster: Morgan Rielly, Jake Gardiner. You also play with Zigomanis, as I mentioned, who we've had on the show, and also a guy named Greg McCaig. And the reason why I mentioned this is because, first off, Leaf fans, fun fact, we got Zach Hyman, and I say we because speaking on behalf of Leaf Nation, Zach Hyman got traded from Florida to Toronto for Greg McCaig. Fun fact. And of course, my last name is McCaig, but he spells it a hell of a lot cooler than I do. But the main thing I want to dive into here is TJ Brennan for a second. Okay, maybe a different route, but you were able to be front row center in the crease in one of the seasons where he had 25 goals and the 72-point season by a defenseman. What the hell happened? What separated him from the league at this point? So that's I want to dive into Toronto about that, and just your overall feeling of where you had that walk-on tryout in Toronto. I believe it was a professional tryout contract that you had. Then you signed a contract with the Leafs that ultimately led to another 1-year, 2-way contract, but we'll get in that momentarily. So those 2 points, TJ Brennan signing in Toronto.
Yeah, TJ, I wrote his coattails for a couple of years. We actually played together in Rochester, and then I thought he was on his way to be a regular with Buffalo. I was there. I was up with Buffalo, I think, for his first NHL game. Anyway, and then we got rekindled in Toronto. He's a great guy. Fun fact about TJ: he bought me a suit. So you put money on the board sometimes. You put money up when you're playing your old team or whatever, and the money goes towards the team pot. One day he just randomly goes on the board and says suit for the guy who gets the game puck or whatever the thing we were doing. I get the game puck and I'm like, what's going on? And the next day off, he brings me to this tailor and buys me a frigging suit, and I'm telling you, a nice one, like probably my nicest suit. Anyway, the guy's a legend. I love him. His shot was ridiculous. Him on the power play, his snapshot, to face him all the time in practice, and then his one timer, and he had it all. I mean, his defensive play, I guess, is what didn't get him in the NHL regularly, but I mean, he was awesome defensively to me. He did it. I loved it when he was on the ice. Put it that way. If he was a liability in any way, I would not want him out there. But yeah, I loved when he was out in front of me, and he was a great teammate. So.
I bet. And then Toronto is where you actually get into and you play your first NHL game. You finally get that start. And I'm happy it was Toronto that gave you that first start. I wish it was maybe a little bit longer, especially because the 2013 year, fans obviously they do remember, but this was the year after that, if I remember correctly, where you got the start after that. So I believe it was after that legendary Boston game, if you will. So you do get a chance in Toronto to play, but again, another crowded crease there, right? They invested in Bernier, which I don't always agree with that trade because I felt Reimer was always a good enough fit, because look at what he did the year prior, but it doesn't matter. Obviously, it's whatever. I feel yourself and Reimer would have been a great tandem for Toronto that season. And they had David Clarkson that year where they invested. He got suspended at the beginning of the year. It's just been an absolute roller coaster up until obviously this point. But you get the chance in Toronto. I'm sure that looking back, and you played 2 games there total, and you had a good numbers there again in your starts in Toronto. So, and I know fans loved you. I remember watching in the crease, and they loved your pads, the Marlies. You always got compliments on your pads. But what's going through your mind where you finally get that name and you get your name called, for your first shot and start in the National Hockey League?
Yeah, it was really the whole time. Toronto brings back a lot of emotions. I thought I was done. I went over to the KHL, broke my ankle, got bought out. Was at home for a month and a half, couldn't get a job anywhere in hockey. Like, I'm saying, I was trying to go to the East Coast League, the United League. Like, I was just so hungry to redeem myself after that Rochester Buffalo year. I knew I had a lot left. I was only like 26 at the time, 27, something like that. Yeah, I think 27. Anyway, I was hungry to do something. Actually, no, I'm wrong. I was 28, I guess. So anyway, I went down the East Coast League finally after a month and a half. Stayed there for a month and a half. Couldn't get anywhere in the AHL. Like, I guess I was there. They all had their prospects and whatnot, and anyway, it took an injury. One night I was sitting in a hotel in Reading, Pennsylvania with my 2 daughters and my wife, living in a hotel. And I saw that Reimer got hurt, and the goalie coach was my friend, Rick St. Croix, from my time in Manitoba. I sent him an email or text right there, and the next morning I get a call. I go to practice and I get a call, and I'm going right to Toronto. So I remember loading up our truck, and I'm telling you, we couldn't fit one more thing in there. We had a baby, like our youngest was a baby at the time. So it was that first game, getting to play, getting called up, and Dallas Eakins actually, giving me the start like the next game, and we won. And the whole time it was just a really emotional time, because it was just fun to kind of redeem myself. And then that next year, so my second year, I re-signed after that year, and that second year went really well. We almost did it. We lost Game 7 again, but that start, that was special. I was with them for that whole collapse. So Bernier, I think I was with them. I don't know. You probably know the stats where they lost, I don't know how many games in a row. Like, they were. I joined the team, and they were comfortably in a playoff spot, like talking about going on a run, and then they lose like every game for, I don't know, I felt like it was like 10 games, and yeah, it was the big collapse. So, and then they missed the playoffs. So it was really frustrating, because again, I knew that I could help this team. Like, Rhymes is a really good friend of mine. We got really close. Our wives are close. An amazing human. But the team was struggling. Like, we were struggling. We're reeling, and I knew that I could help them. I just knew that I could go in there and win a game. And anyway, I didn't get the chance. Carlisle just kept going for Rhymes, and anyway, that's fine. I again get the kind of saying that I don't have NHL experience, so it was tough. They didn't feel comfortable throwing me into that high pressure situation, but so that was really frustrating. And then the day that we get mathematically eliminated, we're in Florida, and the next night they give me the start. So it was an amazing moment. It was tough that it wasn't like it was a meaningless game, and we really didn't play very well. It was frustrating in that sense, but it was really cool. I was 30 years old, getting my first start, after all the ups and downs, and it was really funny in the national anthem. I look up at the flags, and right beside it is a 2001 draft flag. So I kind of had a chuckle. I was like, holy cow, last time I was in this building, I was getting drafted. So,
yeah, that's a full circle.
Yeah, definitely. 12 years later, so it was pretty cool.
That is absolutely unbelievable. Now, obviously, I envy that you got to don that jersey, but at least you finally got the shot. And I think that's hilarious how you just mentioned there you looked up, and full circle how that came around. That still kind of gives me a little shivers, or you kind of said, what, it all worked out and went to this raid. But obviously, after Toronto, there was Charlotte, and there was time that you spent with Rockford, and then you went back overseas for the remainder of your career. So kind of diving into our last topic here, of course, from between going to Charlotte and then we've already talked about, of course, where you played in Japan. So kind of midpoint of that from Charlotte till Zolvlin. I cannot pronounce names in teams in Europe. I'm so sorry. I don't even, sometimes I feel bad for saying names, but nonetheless, you talk about those times, maybe after a couple seasons between Charlotte and Rockford, what gave you that ultimate decision? Say, okay, you know what? I'm done in North America. Let's go explore Europe, because you know what, that some people look at that saying, you know what, maybe didn't have the opportunity anymore in North America. But I think of it as a great new door opening in Europe, because you're able to see the world. So many friends of mine have played overseas, and especially a lot of people love Switzerland and Italy are the two ones I've heard nothing but great things about. But obviously you have an experiences in the KHL, Dell, Austria, Slovakia. It must have all been great after you left North America.
Yeah, it was. We had that feeling. So I was lucky enough to go to the Spengler Cup my 2 years in Charlotte. So after Toronto, they had Sparks and Gibson come in. So I was shown the door, and I went to Charlotte. And my 2 years there, I was so privileged to be able to play with Team Canada at Spengler and Switzerland. So really, it was really just that, like, spending those 2 Christmases and the 2 tournaments there, it opened up some more doors. I always had kind of European options, but I was chasing the NHL, and and also we had a good life. Like, living in Toronto, our family was close. Like, it was awesome for my girls that went to school there and everything. So and then we loved it in Charlotte. Charlotte was an amazing place to live, and we loved it there. But we kind of had the Europe bug. We thought it would be a really cool life experience, great experience for my girls. We had friends that we had played with for a long time that were over there, and just loving it and doing really well. So I was open to it that whole, that year, and I got traded to Rockford at the deadline, and while I was sitting there living in a hotel in Rockford, I actually signed a contract to go to Germany. I signed a 2-year deal for like really good money and like really good situation with an amazing organization. They were called the Hamburg Freezers, Northern Germany, and we were just so pumped to go there. So we felt so lucky to go there, and the owner was the owner. He's the owner of the LA Kings. He owned 2 teams in the league, Berlin, which is like one of the biggest, and then Hamburg, which is another one of the biggest. But we're sitting there in the summer. We had our girls signed up for international school. Like, couldn't have been more excited to get there. Middle of the summer or start of the summer, we get a call and the team folded. So the team folds out of nowhere. I'd never, I wasn't able to. I had my equipment ordered, like. I wasn't able to play a game. And so I'm sitting there with no job. And, a lot of the jobs were all taken. So I couldn't get a job anywhere. I'm sitting there. It's October now, and I'm still, like, didn't have a job. So I ended up, my buddy was coaching in the KHL in Croatia. So I went there, did well there. And then their team kind of some crazy money problems. The team was going bankrupt, basically. So I had, like, around Christmas, they basically sold all the players to all the teams. So it was quite an experience. So I went to Germany. I came back to Germany without ever being in Germany, but came back to Germany, and I was there that year. Did really well with Mannheim, one of the top places to go. And then same thing, the next year, it's October, and I still couldn't get a job. It's really hard for import goalies over there when you're an import, because they only have every league's different, but you're only allowed to have a certain amount of import spots. And some teams don't tell me why. Like, don't ask me why, sorry. Like, I don't get it. It's the most important position. You'd think that every team would want to have import goalies. Yep. But they don't want to use the import spots and goalies, so it's really hard to get jobs over there. So that's why I was really pumped about that Hamburg job. But So I ended up going back to Germany that year, but not until October again. And then I finished. Our team was junk. We were last place, and at the deadline, I ended up going to a top team in Slovakia. Finished the year. So Slovakia, and I loved everywhere. It was awesome. Loved Germany. The atmospheres at the games, like it was so professional, and it was just a lot of fun. My family my family never came over and lived full time there because the schooling situation, like, we were signed up in an international school in Hamburg, but that never happened. So it's really hard school wise because my daughters were a little bit older. They weren't like babies, they're in school age. So they would come over and do long stretches, like a month and a half at a time, and do homeschool. So and we just explore. Like we had some really cool adventures. So I'm really, really thankful for my post North American career as well as my North American career. But I think probably the straw that brought me to Asia was we were sitting there in the playoffs in Slovakia. We're in the quarterfinals. We're supposed to beat these guys, no problem. We're just playing brutal. We lost game 3 of best 7 series, so we're losing the series 2-1 now. And the GM comes in after the game and gives us the speech in Slovakian, and I had no idea what's going on. So I don't even ask. I was pissed off about the loss. I didn't ask. I didn't care. So the next morning at practice, I just kind of asked one of the guys. I said, "Hey, well, what did the GM say?" He said, "Oh, the GM said that if we lose this series, we're not getting paid for the rest of the year." I was like, we still had like 2 or 3 paychecks left. Like we had a good chunk of our salary. I started laughing. I'm like, "Oh yeah, funny." He's like, "No, honestly, if we lose, we won't get paid." Anyway, we ended up winning that series. We lost. We didn't win the championship. We came close, but anyway, it was like that stuff doesn't happen in Japan. If I let in every shot I faced, they'd still pay me every dollar. So I became open to the idea because I was getting those offers for a couple of years, and we just I'm really thankful we had the open mind. We were open to going to that part of the world because it was a beautiful experience.
See, that is hilarious. And you mentioned the Spangler quickly, so I kind of want to dive into that before we go to our quick bonus question. Obviously, playing the Spangler, you have the exposure of donning your country's flag, and we've again on the show have had so many positive experiences told to us about the feeling of donning your country's jersey, and it must have been rewarding, of course, for you, where when you played in the Spangler, you had, I think it was a couple of years, right? 2014 you did, 2014-15 year, 2015-16, and then 16-17. So 3 total years, if I know correctly. And then obviously you did it in the under 18s. So obviously you played 3 games that first year you were there. Just that overall participation, the honor of wearing your country's flag on your crest, on your jersey.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. Hockey Canada's and just they do it right, man. They do everything right. They treat you amazing when you go there. It was always a goal of mine, Spengler Cup. Like everybody watches World Juniors at Christmas, and I was no different. But I would also watch a Spengler. Like I just thought it was the coolest event. Yeah. It looked like a lot of fun. My year when I was with the Marlies, my final season with the Marlies, the rumor was that we were supposed to be the team going over the next year. So that was another, like, I basically told them, like, I don't care. Like, I want to come back. Like, I want to be back. Like, we loved it in Toronto. And that was icing on the cake. I was like, I want to play in the Spengler Cup. Like, it was just a dream of mine, kind of.
Yeah.
And luckily, I got a call. Steve Tambellini called me, and when I was with Charlotte, and Ron Francis was the GM, and he was awesome. He let me go both years. So it was just like, the movie Frozen, Anna and Elsa, like this town is like, you just can't believe it. Like it's the most beautiful little town, like mountains, like it's crazy. Like it's the coolest little town, and the city just goes nuts. Like they're partying, like the whole week is just a big crazy party, and like there's games going on all day, and Hockey Canada, like they fly your whole family over. Like the meals are unbelievable. Like they just treat you amazing. Every day they had an event for the families. So like they wanted us to get have a nap or something, and the families would go do like the coolest things, like hiking, like go on a sleigh ride in the mountains, and like anyway, it was an amazing experience. My daughters spent 3 Christmases in a row in Switzerland. So it's funny. We always joke like that year after, with they were kind of they had quite high expectations for Christmas. So
Switzerland's beautiful too. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was just a amazing experience for our family. So really cool.
So, Drew, I know, of course, we went a little bit extended with this version that I probably promised you, but you know what? That's the fun. We got into a lot of your career, and it's been fantastic. So we're going to get to the wrap-up portion. And before we always let guests go, there's always one bonus question we ask. It's usually a one-worded answer. If you go into a story about it, terrific. If not, totally fine. I kind of putting you on the spot with this question. That's why we do these questions. Just kind of throw you off guard on one, and it might cause you to be bit more kind of get into maybe a quick brief 30-minute story opposed to like a 10-second answer. But I want to, in terms of putting you on the spot, I want to ask you, what is your most hilarious memory and or story with a teammate or teammates outside of the rink? That's right on the spot. That is
yeah. Brooksy might have been there. We would, I think the funnest things we ever did was Mike Keane. Do you remember him? He won 3 Stanley Cups. He was in the Patrick Waugh trade to Colorado. He was it was him and Patrick Waugh.
Yes.
So yeah, our funnest times I think were Super Bowl parties at Keener's house. He had played in the NHL his whole career. He finished his career with Manitoba Moose, his hometown, and he had a mansion. Like the show Cribs could go to his house. Like it was insane. So we would do team parties there, and it was like I remember just the funnest times ever. Like we'd play games in the garage, and I think Brooksy was there, so that was probably our funnest times in at anything with our teammates.
Yeah, I see it going to a mansion watch Super Bowl parties. The times with the boys, there's a lot more, of course, that happen behind the closed doors when you have with teammates and the conversations go on. But it's overall fun when you have those memories and tales and going to big houses. You can't forget going to somebody's absolute mansion. So can definitely understand that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was going to go with Brooksy's usual question with that because he gets credit for a lot of his questions. We said, who's your most influential person in your career? But I know we touched on a lot of that. So I'm happy you did that. So I didn't have to go with that question. And I'm happy I went the direction that I did. So Drew, it's been a pleasure, my friend, to have you on the show. And I know certainly we plan to have you on in the near future just to continue a conversation. But as well, I know Brooksy actually, minute of recording, has been blowing up my phone to ensuring that I said hi to you, and also that to ensure that we do a part 2. So we'll certainly get you on at some point, hopefully even later this summer, later this year. In particular, when we have the video and kind of the new platform going on, it'd be awesome to get you on again in your future. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Anytime. It was my privilege. Thank you very much.
Of course. And one last plug for State of Mind Goaltending to remind listeners quick.
Yeah, stateofmindgoaltending.ca. So yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Definitely give that a check out. Now, I want to thank everyone for listening again. Make sure you hit like, follow, and subscribe on all the platforms of the game and also the Game Entertainment Media, which I remind you is on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Podbean, Podtail, Facebook, Instagram, and our website, thegamesportshow.com. It's quite easy to find it. You can also use Google. You type in the Game Sports Show. We're number one that you find. Number one keyword that I said there. So getting to the conclusion here, again, thank you to Drew MacIntyre, and also thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in. It's been fun hosting for the first time a show in terms of by myself on a special edition. Sometimes it's good to have the full range yourself, and me and Drew, or should I say Drew and I, proper English, had fun the entire show, I would believe. Now, I would like to remind listeners to keep your stick on the ice, swing your bats, catch your touchdowns, drain your threes, and shoot your shots. Booyah.